President Trump picks a fight versus Bitcoin? What? What? So I was totally prepared to just relax the rest of the night, and then my social media starts going all crazy. So 4 hours ago, President Trump sent out some tweets, some very interesting tweets, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of videos and comments and posts about this, so I'll address this now. So he tweeted out that, quote, "I am not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies which are not money and whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air. Unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior, including drug trade and other illegal activity." He continues with another tweet. "Similarly, Facebook's Libra's, quote, virtual currency will have little standing or dependability. If Facebook and other companies want to become a bank, they must seek a new banking charter and become subject to all banking regulations, just like other banks, both national," looks like there's even another one, "and international. We have only one real currency in the USA, and it is stronger than ever. Both dependable and reliable. It is by far the most dominant currency anywhere in the world, and it will always stay that way. It is called the United States dollar." So, some very interesting tweets here. 3 tweets in 4 hours ago. Now, I would add that he's wrong about saying that cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin are what is causing money laundering, because anyone knows who's done even 5 minutes of internet research on this knows that the US dollar is the #1 thing for laundering money. Right? It's a dollar. Okay? The dollar is the easiest for laundering money. You can go look it up. Now, maybe eventually there will be more cryptocurrency, but most of them are not liquid enough to move massive amounts of money. Bitcoin has more liquidity. Ethereum has some liquidity, but a lot of the other cryptocurrencies lack the liquidity to launder money. So it's just ridiculous that you have like the people in power in the US government claiming that, oh no, there's no money laundering whatsoever with the dollar. Okay, so this follows the testimony yesterday. Well, not yesterday, because now it's officially Friday, since it's after midnight. So on Wednesday of Jerome Powell, Fed chairman, about Facebook's Libra. He said some very similar stuff to President Trump. So maybe the Fed is putting some pressure on Trump to get the word out about Facebook's Libra. So in testimony to Congress, the Fed Chair Powell said on Wednesday that Facebook's proposal for Libra raised, quote, "serious concerns regarding privacy, money laundering, consumer protection, and financial stability," end quote, "that will need to be, quote, thoroughly and publicly addressed," end quote, before the social media giant could go forward with the project. Powell added that it is not the central bank's intention to discourage financial innovation. Quote, "We just want to make it, quote, "we just want it to take place in a safe and sound way," end quote, he said, meaning that the Wall Street banks are not going to get their cut, so no. Meaning that the Fed is not going to have oversight, and the Wall Street banks that control them, the large banks, so this is a no-no from Facebook. And not that I like Facebook either, because Facebook is draconian too, with their censorship. So Maxine Waters, the chairwoman, Mad Maxine Waters, the chairwoman of the U.S. House Committee, said earlier that Facebook may be seeking to, quote, "establish a parallel banking and monetary policy system to rival the dollar," end quote. She may or may not have been smoking lots and lots of weed or other drugs before she said that. So just normal BS behavior from the people in power. I don't know why President Trump is picking a fight with Bitcoin. Bitcoin right now, it did drop on Wednesday on the Jerome Powell testimony on Wednesday about the Libra coin, but Bitcoin is still around 11,280. It was at 1,300, so it has that correction based on the comments, I guess, with the combination of Wednesday with Jerome Powell doing the testimony and then Trump also tweeting. Bitcoin looks like, let me see here. Yeah, Bitcoin's down about 3.26% on that news. So the people in power, the spin job, since I know some more information on some of these things, let me just talk about it since I have a little bit of a platform here about the Silk Road and some of the other stuff. So, hi Lena, thanks for joining the live stream. So I have spoken with Ross Ulbricht's mom in some brief conversations, not hours and hours or anything, but I have spoken with her about some of the things that went on in his trial, and I have gone to the website, which is, I believe, is freeross.org, freeross.org or freeross.com that she set up. And basically, Ross Ulbricht at the trial, and the government is saying that Ross Ulbricht was the total mastermind of Dread Pirate Robert, Silk Road, and that, all these bad things happened there. He was not given proper discovery at his trial. It was a total sham of a trial. He was given sleep deprivation torture, I believe, for weeks before the trial. I believe he was not allowed to sleep. He was not allowed to look really at any evidence or discovery. It was a joke of a trial. He was not allowed to, him and his defense attorneys were not allowed to present an alternative theory of the crime. He has claimed outside of the trial that he sold the Silk Road website before a lot of the stuff that was claiming happened. And anyway, the U.S. government and all the attorneys that were involved, first of all, a number of the agents that apprehended Ross Ulbricht, they were corrupt AF. So I won't cuss on this live stream because I don't want it demonetized. But they were super, super corrupt. And they ended up stealing a lot of the Bitcoins. And there's allegations that they were involved in crimes as well. So some of the agents that were supposed to be investigating Ross Ulbricht, I think one was from the FBI and the other was it NSA? And they did end up stealing some of the Bitcoins, and I think one of them's in prison. And then even though the U.S. government is claiming, we did all this great stuff with Silk Road, well, I believe after the Silk Road, the first one was shut down, I think there's at least a dozen more of them on the dark web, and I don't know how many more of them shut down, but as, one or two get shut down, more and more pop up. And you don't hear that on the mainstream media. You only hear about the win from the federal government, how they shut down the Silk Road. So it's just more and more bullshit and lies from the government. I mean, this sounds like to me that the large Wall Street banks put some pressure on Trump to come out and speak and say bad things about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency because no competition. So that's why it was brought up with Trump in the tweets as well with Facebook and the Libra coin that he basically has to get a banking charter and they have to give in to the Federal Reserve. No competition. So it's only, for those of you not familiar with the Federal Reserve, the large Wall Street banks run it. And the smaller and medium-sized banks get crushed. They get bought out. They don't get the bailouts that the large banks do. The large banks have a cartel and protection. The small little competing banks don't have much of a chance. So what do you think about Trump picking a fight with Bitcoin? I think it's pretty ridiculous, personally. I think it's totally ridiculous. And I've been to these DC Blockchain Summit conferences here in the DC metro area because I have a large YouTube channel and I'm friends with Perry Ann Boring. I get invited to them, and I've been to them. And I've listened to people in the SEC, in the CFTC. People own Bitcoin in there. So some of these guys in public may go out and bash Bitcoin or say it needs to be regulated, but in private with their own money, they're buying Bitcoin. Trump is an actor. Well, he was on The Apprentice. He got good ratings there. Central banks are the wrong system. It'll fail in the next 6 to 12 months. I don't know about 6 to 12. The timing of these things is so tricky because they can change the rules, they can move the goalposts. We don't know, and we may never find out the extent, the amount of backdoor bailouts, covert quantitative easing or QE that have been done, that are being done now. I mean, we could be seeing right now, because there is problems in Australia. We wouldn't even know this unless the people in power. I wasn't planning on talking about this on this show, but since you guys are here and I have an audience, that we may even, well, there might not be an announcement, but it might already be happening that the Federal Reserve might have already opened up swap lines to the Bank of Australia. So the U.S. could already be bailing out Australia. We don't know. We may never find this out. So I know there's a lot of people in the gold community that hate Bitcoin. There's all this ignore Bitcoin, and then the Bitcoin community is drop gold. To me, I don't really, the one or the other, as you guys know, this is not financial advice, but in the world we live in now, it's very dystopian. the economic and political elites in power can change the rules anytime. So I feel like I'm basically Charlie Brown and they could just pull the football, or I already kicked the field goal and they're moving the goalpost to make sure that they screw us over. So to be all in on gold, to put all your money only into one thing, only into rental properties, only into Bitcoin, only into gold, is a very dangerous game because the rules can change. So you think you know what the rules are, and then all of a sudden the rules change. No, I'm just making an educated guess. The Reserve Bank of Australia can print its own currency. Yeah, but everyone ultimately needs dollars. US dollars. US dollars are the main fiat currency. My source on Australia is myself, because I know more about the currency swaps right now than pretty much anyone else. I was reporting this in the gold community and alternative media before almost anyone else. And you know what? I broke this story in 2014, and a lot of people used my information and gave me exactly zero credit. I sent out dozens and dozens of emails back then that were probably 2 pages long explaining things, and I got one thank you back in the emails, and I saw all the information going out everywhere else on all these other websites and YouTube videos and channels that are larger than mine, podcasts that are larger than mine. No one else gave me credit for anything. Nomi Prince was the only person who sent me back a thank you email. And then we had dinner a couple years later to talk about it. Okay, so the swaps have been what has been bailing out the European Union, European government bonds, European central banks before the ECB started to ramp up QE. The swaps, if you find, as I talked about in the Ron Paul one-time partial audit, and by the way, guys, since you're on here on this live stream, I'm interviewing Dr. Ron Paul again tomorrow. Yes, but it's only for 20 minutes. But it's to promote the Ron Paul Institute conference that's coming up in a month. So you want to meet me? You want to meet Ron Paul in person? It's at the Dulles Airport Marriott. I think it's like $70. And David Stockman is supposed to speak there. He's one of the keynote speakers, and they haven't announced the rest of the guest list yet. But it's going to be a nice conference. It's not too expensive. Yeah, I've interviewed Dr. Ron Paul in the past. But yeah, back to the currency swaps. Dr. Ron Paul talked about this as well. That before the European Central Bank announced quantitative easing, that the swap lines from the Federal Reserve to the ECB were what was keeping the European Union, European government bonds, European corporations, European banks afloat. And I'm sure I very seriously doubt, my educated guess is I very seriously doubt that those swap lines have stopped. Now, maybe they've been reduced, but I doubt that the money has been paid back and the swap lines are closed. The Ron Paul... No, I'm not interviewing David Stockman tomorrow, Joseph. But thank you for the super chat, though. I appreciate it. David Stockman will be the keynote speaker next month at the Ron Paul Institute conference. So if you want to meet me in person there, you want to get a picture with Dr. Ron Paul. Dr. Ron Paul speaks, I think, for 35-40 minutes at the conference. So it's good. And normally in the past, the speakers they have a great guest list. It's one of the best conferences for the price. It's only one day. It's normally on a Saturday, from like 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., something like that. It includes food. But the speaker list is sensational. In the past, Julian Assange from WikiLeaks, he video chatted in and spoke for like 20 or 30 minutes. And Edward Snowden also called in via video and spoke for 20 or 30 minutes. And then last year, Nicholas Nassim Taleb was there too. Paradigm Shift says... Australian banks were bailed out by the U.S. It was admitted years later. Yes, supposedly, I found this out from Josh Sigurdsson's World Alternative Media. He interviewed a Canadian banking expert, and that guy said that the Canadian banks were secretly bailed out in the TARP program. So the Troubled Asset Relief Program, that was mostly meant for U.S. banks, that the Canadian banks got an enormous bailout, hundreds of billions of dollars hidden in there too. Which is interesting because for years people were saying the Canadian banks had no financial problems, the Canadian banks were in great shape, and then, secretly I guess they were bailed out too. Michael says swap lines won't help anymore. It's game over. I don't know about that. I mean, there's a lot of dominoes that are close to falling. There's China's economy. There's the U.S. corporate bond market. There's the European Union, European banks with Deutsche Bank and all those counterparties. So there's a lot of emerging markets are a problem too, especially because the dollar did not weaken. So there's a lot of major economic landmines out there, any of which could fall at any time. But the swaps have prevented a total collapse for years now. They papered things over for trillions and trillions of dollars. We don't know. I don't know if we're ever going to get the exact amount because, as I've talked about, the one-time partial audit, there was $16 trillion. And that was just a one-time partial audit. I mean, if they were running full audits, I'm sure it would be a lot more money than that. Joseph asks if I think we might be experiencing the beginning of a crack-up boom. Yeah, there's a lot of evidence in the asset prices. Now, the consumer prices are different. We are being screwed, but it's much more slowly. So if you own assets, it's not as bad. So if you own stocks and bonds and real estate and Bitcoin, it's not as bad. They've capped gold, but if they knock gold price down enough, the supply of gold is going to slow down a lot. And then there's going to be too much demand on physical metal, and then the price is going to have to go up. The silver miners are in big trouble, though. Silver is going to have to rise soon, or the silver miners have to. Some of them have to raise capital in 6 months or less, or they're looking at bankruptcy. The debt ceiling, theoretically, the debt ceiling can go unlimited. But you saw that there was, I just saw this story like hours ago, that there was a problem in the 30-year U.S. Treasury market, which means that the Exchange Stabilization Fund and the plunge protection teams and the primary dealers who are supposed to buy those bonds did not do a good job, which means that they will get a emergency meeting or some type of meeting. They're going to be, like in school, like when you were a bad student, you get called into the principal's office because, you did something wrong and you're going to get your ear chewed off. I feel like that's going to happen to, like, the primary dealers, the large banks, and the exchange, whoever's running the Exchange Stabilization Fund and the plunge protection teams. And they're going to get called into the principal's office. Either that's like the president, the U.S. president, or someone else, Secretary of Treasury, and they're going to get yelled at why there was a problem in the 30-year U.S. Treasury auction. So theoretically, the debt ceiling can go unlimited. As long as there's demand for the bonds and people are willing to take even zero coupon U.S. Treasuries that are going to 100% be inflated away, which is what was, by the way, Ben Bernanke's emergency plan in 2008 and 9, that if nothing else worked, he would inflate, and do massive QE and then issue an enormous amount, many trillions of dollars in zero coupon bonds with no interest payments due, and then just inflate the debt away. That was Ben Bernanke's plan if nothing else worked. I'm taking a look at questions and comments. I didn't really plan on doing anything else other than just talking about the ridiculousness of Trump picking a fight with Bitcoin. My God, that's ridiculous. Do you think, okay, answer this either in the live chat or below the video. So do you think that President Trump was told to issue a statement against Bitcoin and then against cryptocurrency and then against Facebook's Libra coin by the large Wall Street banks or by the Federal Reserve? So answer that question either in the live chat or after the video is over below that. And why would Trump even do this? I mean, a lot of rich people now are getting into Bitcoin. Did you see, the Deutsche Bank bankers that got fired? And, one of them now it's pictures all over the internet. The guy's, in an expensive suit, like a $3,000 or more suit. And he has a Bitcoin bag. It's remember at that Fed testimony a couple years ago, how it was Janet Yellen was speaking. And then there was, a guy with a sign behind Janet Yellen saying, "Buy Bitcoin." Michael says it's Wall Street versus Silicon Valley, or the U.S. government versus Silicon Valley. Well, I don't really like a lot of the people in Silicon Valley anyway. A lot of them don't like free markets. A lot of them don't like capitalism, even though they're rich. And a lot of them are big on censorship. I mean, my channel, I should be making easily thousands of dollars per month in ad revenues. I used to do that. And at one point, and at one point, YouTube took it down to 0. So it should be actually, the way things should work is the larger your YouTube channel is with more views per video and more subscribers, the easier it should be to make money. And the way YouTube has screwed tons of people over, tons of my friends over, who have larger YouTube channels than mine, is now it's the exact opposite. This is a good answer. Ubris says Trump doesn't understand Bitcoin well enough to have an opinion on it. That's his own. Exactly. Exactly. So he was told to do this. That's what I think too. Well, Trump likes gold. He used to take, I think, for some of his rent payments at some of his buildings, he used to either take gold as collateral or he could pay him in gold. That was like 5 or 6 years ago. It was a while ago. Well, Trump just had his social media summit earlier this afternoon, right? So this must have been like another threat at Silicon Valley too, that he's getting really fed up with them. Because he was supposed to have this social media censorship summit this afternoon, and then Twitter went down for over an hour earlier this afternoon too. Just a bunch of weird things happening lately. Really, really weird stuff. They got Bitcoin down a couple $1,000 though. It was at 13,000 a couple days ago before the Powell testimony. The gold community is crap. Not everyone in the gold community is bad. I think there's a lot of good people, but sometimes they get lazy with their research, or they don't study enough other experts, or they get confirmation bias. But there are now, unfortunately, and I've learned this the hard way with a lot of bad business deals and lots of people not doing what they've said. There are a lot of dishonest people in the gold community. I've had advertising contracts that were agreed on, that were signed contracts sent up to the headquarters of a gold company, and then they told me to go pound sand, and other deals that have gone bad. Okay, well, there's tons of stuff, there's tons of questions and comments in the live chat, so there's too many for me to answer right now. I'm going to go take a break for the rest of the night and hopefully get some sleep before I interview Dr. Ron Paul tomorrow. Okay, talk to you guys later. Bye.